Hi, everybody. This is Ken Corbin, and welcome once again to the Manufactured Home Show. This is the program where I have the opportunity to interview the absolute best of the best in our industry, from retailers to suppliers, communities, lenders, and today with Mary Gaiski, one of the premier executive vice presidents up there in the beautiful state of Pennsylvania. But before we begin, and as always, if you have any questions, perhaps you know someone who you might recommend as a guest, or perhaps you'd like to be a guest, simply drop me an email to ken@callkencorbin.com, and I'll be sure and get back to you, and we'll try to schedule something. But if you'd like to see not only this program with Mary, but all the programs in this series, you can go to my website, which is callkencorbin.com, and you'll see a little icon in the upper right-hand side that says Manufactured Home Show. You can also see all of these on learnmh.com, which is part of manufacturedhomes.com, but learnmh.com. And also you'll see the little icon that says videos, and they're all there. And finally, of course, you can go to my business Facebook page, which is Ken Corbin Speaker. And with that, today, let me introduce to you a very special guest, Mary Gaiski, who's the Executive Vice President of the Pennsylvania Manufactured Housing Association. She's been with the association for 34 years, working on legislative, regulatory, educational, and promotional issues on behalf of the manufactured housing and modular housing industries. The Pennsylvania Manufactured Housing Association is a nonprofit trade organization representing over 460 companies located and marketing throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And with that, Mary, thank you so much. I am so glad to have you on the program, and welcome.
Thank you, Ken. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you as well. And as we were talking before the program, my last live presentation that I was able to give this year was actually up in Gettysburg with you and your fantastic group. And it was the second time that I had a chance to work with you. Of course, this time at the end of it, it was the end of all programs live because COVID arrived. And the previous program, that one of the programs that I did with you was in Hershey about 3 years ago. And I arrived the night before. I had flew in from my home in Mexico, and everybody was talking about the snowstorm, and I'm looked around, there's no snow. I get up the next morning and it's like everywhere. And it was crazy. And I recalled even FedEx couldn't even get to the hotel. So it's been an adventure coming to visit and work with you.
Well, it's Pennsylvania in March. What can you expect,
Yeah, and as we were saying earlier, that afternoon after the big snowstorm, like within 24 hours, it was never there.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, we have some unique snow events in March here in Pennsylvania.
Well, let's kind of get into the program and talk a little bit about what you do, how you do it. And I know the importance. I'm sure many of our viewers know the importance, but for those that don't understand, maybe you can share with everyone the importance of being a member of an association like the PMHA.
Well, for me, I just, and I guess I'm a little biased here because I do work for an association, but I just can't imagine going into a business and not knowing where I can find resources, where I can find information that's related to that business to make me a bit better business person, or to make sure that I'm following the rules.
Sure.
And I think that is one of the biggest things we do offer to our membership. It's the resources that we have access to. I get people that are saying to me all the time, well, Mary, you know everything. Well, I don't know everything. I've been around a lot. And, you try to improve upon what you do know. You try to read, you try to understand. But so knowing where you can go to get those resources, and people who are in the know on the laws and the regulations. Every industry has laws and regulations that impact it. And not knowing where you can get that is, and the best place to go is an association. We also have access to, we have the ability to provide like networking for our members. I get all the time, people will say, is anyone else having this problem? Where can I find, can I talk to somebody? And I can hook them up with people that are having those problems or find other people who are. But it's when we provide programs, not doing a whole lot of in-person stuff right now, but even I think there's still some value with the online or the virtual, because you're still listening to people and seeing who has the same questions you have, or a question that's relative to something, a challenge that you're facing. But having those networking opportunities, because you need to talk with like-minded people to better understand how you can do it better, or why you're doing something one way and it's not working. So those networking opportunities. And then you also have the watchdog, as they say, for the legislative and regulatory, having somebody who can watch that, whether you're a small business or even the big business. And I know a lot of big businesses, like, Comcast and those that have their own lobby type people, and they watch that, or they pay attorneys to watch that, or lobby groups to watch it for them. But at the same time, you don't get everything, because they might not be focused in the direction. And where trade associations like PMHA, we try to stay ahead of the game. And also talking with legislators. They want to talk with the person who's on the ground. They want to talk with their constituents, though, we're closer to represent them. But, this way we can target our members to the legislators they need to be concentrating on with certain issues. So, advocacy is a big part of what we do on behalf of our members. And the one thing I always hate to hear when we're talking any issues is that phrase, unintended consequences. That's like, to me, that's just the big oops. Somebody wasn't paying attention when you were trying to educate them on an issue and how it's going to impact someone. And then, of course, you're running fast to fix something at the last minute. But, those are the three things, is, having the resources, knowing where you can go for the resources, having the ability to network with like-minded people, and then the advocacy, making sure that your issues are understood by someone out there when they come up before for either a legislative or a regulatory type action.
Well, and Pennsylvania is such a unique state in the respect that your association works with all the facets of our industry, not only from manufacturing to retailers to suppliers. You have lenders there. You have, everyone. Part of our association is involved in the state. And let's take an example, manufacturing today. With the unfortunate occurrence of the COVID virus, that's put a real stop in many cases to retailers and communities that are afraid to order homes. They don't know what's going on, and because of the pricing. And we were talking earlier before the program, it looks like at this point, based on lumber futures, that we're going to begin to see a decline starting in mid to late November, which goes along historically with home sales. They begin to drop down because people are more concerned about Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Right.
And so your association is so actively involved in all of this. And for a member to be able to come to you and ask about the various services, and let's talk about that for just a moment. What type of services specifically do you offer? Because your members keep coming back. Unlike, unfortunately, many associations, members come and go and come and go. The members at the PMHA, they continue to stay. They continue to understand the value of your membership. So what keeps them coming back?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I hear all the time is, and not to brag, but they'll say, like, Mary, we can always call on you and get an answer, or we can at least call the office and get an answer. And I think that's the biggest thing is, sometimes when you're sitting there and you're frustrated with an issue, or you're frustrated with something that's happening with a sale or something, you can call somebody, and that's the association. That's one of our biggest member benefits, is having access to the information, the knowledge base that we do have, and getting those answers. And the other thing is, and it's something I instill on my staff, if we don't have the answer, and it might not be directly involved with manufactured housing, because you'd be surprised on some of the questions we do get, then let's see if we can find the answer for them.
Yeah.
A real funny, I had a member who called me probably a couple months ago, and she asked a question, and I'm like, I have no clue. This really isn't in my wheelhouse, and it's not really truly. So I'm here typing away, and she's like, are you typing, Mary? I said, I'm Googling that. She goes, you're Googling that. Well, I could have done that. I said, well, let's Google it together then. So we'll find out the answer together. But that's the big thing, I think, with associations, when you get and sometimes the members know the answer, but that's a real funny one too. And they'll say, well, I'm not going to give you the answer you want, because you could tell by the way they ask the questions. And I'm going to say, but I'm going to give you the right answer. And I hope you do it legally and you do it right. But I'm sorry I didn't give you the answer you want. But sometimes, it goes that way. But knowing, and then having the pulse on the fact that we do represent the whole industry. So we represent, unlike a few other associations that might just have a niche of who they represent, so we're constantly engaging with all sectors of the industry. So we can help one sector understand why something's happening because of the way someone else is, another sector is impacting their normal processes, if you will, and try to guide them through that to make it a lot easier. And that's always a challenge legislatively, when you've got an issue that could impact one segment of the industry one way, and then another a different way, and sometimes negatively. That's a constant challenge you have on trying to bring them to the middle to get everybody satisfied as best you can for always the benefit of the whole. But knowing that information and knowing what's going on in the different segments help us to do all of that, and to answer those questions when they come in.
And the state of Pennsylvania is so large, not only geographically, but from a populous standpoint.
Oh, yes.
And you have such a diverse groups of Republicans to demographic, to age, to race, and so forth. And we were also mentioning earlier, behind you, they have this vast catalog of information that, over 34 years, you've been able to put together. And that's remarkable. But this year has brought about something that you, nor I, nor any of our listeners or viewers could ever have imagined, which is obviously COVID. So from your respect, what do you see, or how do you see COVID? How's it affected not only your members, but the association as well? What has it done?
Well, you mentioned earlier that you were up here in March for our annual convention, and that ended on the 14th, and we, which was a Thursday, and went home. And about a week before that, I started really paying attention to what was happening, because our governor was shutting down the state, if you will, by counties based on impact of positive COVID. And mostly our southeastern sector of the state was impacted by that. And then within a week, we were totally shut down.
Yeah.
By that next Thursday, we got the directive that the governor in a vacuum created this essential, non-essential list. And the only sector, whenever we got access to the list, and I'm looking down that, my head's exploding, because the only sector that was open was some of our warehousing and transportation was the only sector. Pennsylvania was one of the few, I think Washington State And I know some of the other states had some impact to the construction industry, but our entire construction industry, not only the residential housing, but the commercial, the road building, every aspect of construction was shut down and considered non-essential at that moment in time. I mean, people, as you can imagine, our phones were blaring and our emails were just going insane. And again, the operative there was he did it in a vacuum. And a lot of people don't understand that. He did it in a total vacuum. And with that came the shutdown of our state offices. So, and each office, so whether it was the Department of Revenue or Transportation or DEP, they all handled it a little differently. So, and all of a sudden we were with no contacts, nowhere. You didn't know who was answering emails, who was answering. You couldn't get through to the phones. I chuckled through some of this because a lot of businesses put, you're upset about this, so are we, call, and then they had the governor's office number.
Yeah.
Well, just for fun, to keep it clean, I dialed the number the one day, and you know where that number was truncated to?
Where?
The Department of Health.
Oh my God.
To the Department of Health is where he was taking his calls. And that was one of the things that frustrated our legislators too. They were not brought into the loop on this whole thing by the governor. So, it took us a good week to try to figure out who you could contact, who were, they gave you legislators were struggling. We were using all chits we had available to us to try to figure out who you needed to talk to. Now, we partnered up with the building industry to try to get the construction open. And then our factories, of course, wanted to be open. We were successful within 3 weeks of getting our factories back open. And that was with the help of some of our contacts over at the Department of Community and Economic Development, and letting them know that we don't just build these homes for Pennsylvania. 65% of our production goes outside the state. And those states did not shut down construction. And then keep in mind, it wasn't until May 1. So this all happened on May 18th. It wasn't until May 1 that March 18th. And it wasn't until May 1 that we got our construction open. So we had construction started. I mean, so you can imagine the frustration that was, floating around out there. It was very frustrating. We shut down our office here. We sent the staff home. Within 4 weeks, I was back in the office. I just couldn't handle that. I couldn't work from home. First of all, I have a little person there and a husband. So it was like, I got to get back to sanity here. This is insane. But yeah, so then, and as we were slowly getting things open, but even though our factories could get open, they still had other challenges. They had employees that they laid off. They were making more with the stimulus money and their unemployment than they were making, or at least equal to that. Why should they come back to work when they can sit around and do what they want? I mean, we were quarantined, but we weren't, they didn't come and put locks on our houses on the outside, so we couldn't get out. And they were encouraging people to get out in the outdoors at the same time, so and then of course, with all of that and what was happening in the other states, then supply chain challenges started to rear their ugly heads, which we've been seeing. I think the biggest thing our retailers did was they were back on their job sites. As soon as May 1st happened, they were back on their job sites trying to get them open. We were lucky in convincing them that our retail centers can open because automobile dealers couldn't open, and we are licensed the same as them. So, so we convinced them that what we did was more attuned to, site builders. So we needed those facilities open and working. And then we slowly got the retail back. The biggest challenge right now are our communities. They were August 31st is when the rent and mortgage moratorium lifted here in PA. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Luckily for us, the governor did not extend that, though there's still a huge push to do that. Yeah. Now they're challenged with trying to figure out how this whole CDC mandate rule that came down. It's not, I'm not going to call it a mandate because it's just a rule. But and then our biggest challenge there was our MDJs, the magistrate, the magisterial district judges. They were kind of making up their own rules with the moratorium stuff.
Sure.
Because it was just based on rent. But so if you had a rule violation, you're supposed to be able to still take them to court. Well, they didn't want to do that. So, you had, and there was just so much, I think, uncertainty. And I'm sure you heard on the news, our governor, first he says you wear a mask, then if you want to wear a mask, and then it was a mandate to wear a mask, and then he's parading with people with no mask, and so it's been a lot of frustration, and I'm sure it's the same in other states. Yeah. And we still continue to struggle with it.
Well, let me ask you about, you mentioned the legislature a few times, and I know Pennsylvania is one of the few states that has a full-time legislature. And with that, that's going to obviously bring about some challenges. And maybe you can discuss not only that, but what are some of the issues that the PMHA is currently covering or discussing with your legislature?
Yeah, we do have a full-time legislature. Thank goodness it's not, every day nonstop, but because they do take holidays and breaks. Yeah. But so our legislature runs, it's a 2-year session. So it's a full-time 2-year session. It starts in January of the odd year and ends in November of the even year. Okay. So we're at the end basically of the 2019-2020 session. And basically, the one thing, whenever I'm listening to the other states talk, and they're like, oh, well, we've got to, like, they're focused for a very small period of time when their legislature in. We're focused 24/7, 365 for 2 years for the session. And the other thing is some states will introduce bills at a particular time, so you know what you're dealing with. While our session is when our legislature is in session, they can introduce a bill at any time. So at any given moment, we are monitoring we're in a 2-year session, anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 bills can be introduced. Holy cow. And that's been like that. I've always, since I've worked for the association, have monitored, read bills, and tried to see if they're going to impact us. In any given session, we could be monitoring up to 500 bills because of the different things that they might impact with, because again, we're pretty multi hats here. We've got the, HR, it could be something to do with just business in general. It could be transportation. It can be water, wastewater, sales tax. I mean, it's all over the place. So yeah, that is a challenge. And we're on, because even in the summer, when they take time off, take a holiday, they could still be scheduling committee hearings on certain issues. So we're on. Now, thankfully, I do have help with that because we have a full-time lobbyist that works on our behalf. Okay, good. And so they can keep in the know. And then I'm a registered lobbyist as well, so I can go in and I attend hearings, and I do that so that I can talk issues specifically with our legislators, because even lobbyists, like the legislators, they're not 100% knowledgeable on every issue that they work with. So, that helps out. Issues we're working with right now, most of their focus right now has been with the COVID and dispersing, the millions of dollars of the CARES Act dollars that came their way. They're trying to revamp our rental relief program so that it's more people are eligible for it, because there were caps in what your rent was. They're trying to do that. Also get it out to, they kind of scared the landlords because they said, well, if you accept the rent relief, if you allow your resident to accept the rent relief, then you can't file for them for a certain period of time for eviction. So there was a lot of confusing stuff in that. They're also looking to help the people with utility problems, paying their utility bills. So there's still a pocket of money out there that has not been allocated. So there's a big bill that we've been working on to make sure that our communities that charge separately for water, wastewater, or electric, or even propane, that they can get access, their residents can get access to those dollars. On issues in general, that's not this COVID related that hit us this year, rent control has reared its ugly head again. One of the challenges we have here that we're seeing, it's a nationwide thing where we have new investors coming in and looking positively at our manufactured housing communities as a good investment for them. So there's been some change in ownership. A lot of times when that happens, we're going from a mom and pop to like a corporate owned per se, or someone who has investors that they need to satisfy. So the mentality of how you do rents is a little bit different. And our mom and pops haven't traditionally kept the rents up to market rates. So they'll come in and raise rents, and that's starting to be noticed at the legislature. So
Wow.
we saw a rent control bill be introduced. There's not much time to do anything. We have like 10 session days left for voting. So, but it's something that could come back next year. We're also trying to get the banking, the federal law was changed on the banking regulations. We're trying, that was great. But what happens now is every state has to go back and make a change with their state laws to mirror the changes that happened at the federal. So we're still trying to do that. Our Department of Banking feels that it wasn't done right at the federal level. So we're still working through on that. We also have some small titling bills. We monitor transportation all the time too, because with our factories here in the state, transportation is a big thing for us here. So those are some of the things.
It's amazing. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers are beginning to see the various things that you end up touching from an association perspective. It's remarkable. And let's just talk about going in the future, the challenges, the opportunities. Where do you see us going forward?
Well, I think we still have a bright future ahead of us, because we are affordable housing. And it's funny, I sit in a lot of meetings with other housing advocacies, and we talk about, that's the whole thing is affordable housing, which some people think that's a negative term. And so you get to attainable housing and all. But I think affordable housing, we still have a bright future there. But we have to work at it. Even as long as we've been around working with these people, and I know well the people who work on the other side, in the other housing arenas here in Pennsylvania. But, when they're talking about affordable housing, they don't always say, oh, we need to get manufactured housing at the table. Yeah. Or we need to get the factory built housing at the table. 9 times out of 10, I always say, oh, I guess I'm going to have to crash that party. So you have to show up, or you have to call and say, hello, we're out here too. Can we do something? Can we work together? Because we're not the bad guys. And sadly, it remains, and more so here in PA, because our local governments have the first, they have the say on what comes in to their, they're the ones who write the zoning and the land planning type ordinances. So, it's a local, it's a state, and it's a national issue. And, until you can get everybody working together, it's going to continue to be a challenge across the board. So, but I think that that's a great opportunity we have, that we have to keep trying to, we have to keep crashing those parties. So
that's a great way to put it.
We can make it happen.
What a wonderful way to put it.
Definitely one.
Yeah. Well, Mary, you've been there 34 going on 35 years. You put together a remarkable team. You know who to talk to when there's an issue, where to go to when there's an issue. But let's talk about Mary for a minute. Looking forward the next 5 years, 10 years, how do you see yourself in that period of time?
That's funny. That's a question that's most asked right now, it seems. I had a milestone birthday not too long ago.
Yes, I heard.
And it's funny because, you get a little sensitive to that. They're like, why are you asking now? But, I have been around a long time, I should say. And and some of my members are starting to retire out, and they'll say, "Oh my God, Mary, you've been here as long as I've been here," you know, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's probably time. And I've had this discussion with my board too. For as long as they'll let me do it, I still have a lot of good years ahead of me. You know, I have one member who said I'm not allowed to leave until they have the technology that they can plug something into my head, I guess like a flash drive. Who knows what it's going to be in 10 years.
Oh,
And they can suck all that knowledge out. You know, that's kind of like a big ouch, and it gives you the heebie-jeebies. But I mean, seriously, I think I have a good 5 to 10 years ahead
good.
of me here. I'm still, I mean, I love this industry. I love the people I work with. It does make me sad as, you know, some of them leave, either retirement or otherwise. We just had a good member that passed away not too long ago, and he was a great person to work with on water, wastewater issues, and he'll be dearly missed. But, you know, I'm hoping, good Lord willing here, and the board's, you know, still willing to keep me on, that I can hang around for a good 5 to 10 more years and help the members and help the industry as best that I can.
Well, I can tell you, it is always a pleasure to talk to you because you are so knowledgeable, and you've been able to gather all this information for all these years. And I keep going back to the books we talked earlier about. Sometimes you don't even have to reference them. It's like driving an automobile and putting it on cruise control. You know, Mary knows it, and that's the reason, Mary, everybody loves you in Pennsylvania. And the other association members, you're such an admiration. You're such a success, and someone that we should all look up to and thank Mary for being a part of this industry, because we wouldn't be where we're at today without having someone like you at the helm. And I thank you. You've been great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment.
And for everybody out there, if you only see this once, you may want to look at it a second time, because this has been an absolutely remarkable interview. Mary, we thank you for taking time away to chat with us and sharing your background, your history, your visions for the future, and where the industry's going, where you're going. And with that, I want to thank all of you for attending another edition of the Manufactured Home Show. Goodbye.